Nerd, nerdverts. All right. How you guys doing? I'm loving all these names. Make sure this is muted. This is muted. All right. All right. The movie pronouncer voice. Did you guys watch the Pixelogic stream when my microphone went nuts and it dropped my voice and made it sound like a robot? Like I was on the witness protection program or something? Uh, or we can do something with warbles, the anti-warblers. I don't know. Love the names though. Okay, so today, let's see. This is where we left off. Let's remind ourselves where we left off. Okay, so we had the UVs to this point right here, and this is Sirloin, and he doesn't have his eyes in here. So we were going to put the eyes on a different UV coordinate and apply its own maps to that coordinate. Also, what I've done, just so you know, is I have assigned a material, and you can do this anywhere. I like to do it in Maya. You can do it in Blender. It doesn't really matter. I don't think it works inside of ZBrush, to my knowledge. But just this is a way, and I think you can do it in Substance Painter as well. I'm not sure, but this is an easy way to do it, is assign a new material to each UV coordinate. So I essentially changed this to UV shell, selected everything in this UV coordinate, and then made a new body material. It's just a blend. And how you do that inside of Maya is you right click on this the background of this material editor. This material editor you get to by clicking on this right here. It's called the Hypershade. You right click, go to create, and I just created create materials blend. So I just made a handful of blend materials. Blend is just kind of Maya's default material. So I put a bunch of materials and the warblers. Hey, hey, we're the warblers. Oh, that's funny. Oh, that's funny. Okay, I like the warblers. So this is all the chainmail, and it does not fit inside here very well. There's a lot of wasted UV space. Now, offline, I just experimented and I tried to straighten these UVs out, bring them into Substance Painter to see what it would look like if I applied a smart material, and I can show you guys that in a minute. Basically, when I straighten these out, it really stretches the tileable textures inside of Painter. So I wanted to try to just do a basic unwrap on these without editing any of the edges to be straight or anything like that, to see if we can get better chainmail. And the reason I put these in its own coordinates is because it's very, very detailed. There's a lot of detail in there. So I'm just going to make the chainmail be on one map or one material. And then his face, his tongue, his hair, and his teeth are all on this 0 to 1 coordinate right here. Okay, so I made another material that is, that's just the face. Okay. Hey, what's up, Dana? How you doing? Haven't seen you for a while. The warblers. Oh, I love it. Okay, so I like the spelling better than the spelling I had for the warbles. I like W-O. That's good. And it almost, I think there's actually a bird called a warbler, right? Is that a bird? So I actually made I made a not a warbler, but a warble, like a thing well, yeah. Was it called the I think that's what I called it. Anyway, it looks like a gremlin, and what I wanted to do is rig it up. I don't know if you saw. You guys want me to pull it up? I made it during one of the Pixelogic streams, and let's see on Twitch. Let's see if I can warble. I just called it a warble. Instead of, see, it's W-A instead of W-O. Bird warbler, yeah. So this is what it looks like right here. And I wanted to make, Adam Manoa designed this guy for me. Super cool. So this is kind of what I envision as a warble. And essentially I wanted to make a bunch of them, kind of like those blue pixies on Harry Potter that just cause mischief, right? So I wanted to make a character that's kind of in its regular T-pose and have a bunch of these guys crawling all over it, biting it, and making warbles in the surface, right? That was the idea, right? So anyway, yeah, we could totally be the warblers. All right, or the anti-warblers. So anyway, yeah, this is I think it turned out really good. The design is great. Okay, so back to what I was talking about with Sirloin here. So I made his eyes like this, okay? When we built him out, and we have his teeth in here, we have his eyes in here. I was typically, well, during Disney Infinity, we typically would hand paint the eyes on the surface. But I talked to Brendan, and he suggested I build out the eyes on this guy because he's kind of a step beyond stylized towards realistic, just a little bit, because we're going to have some interesting materials on here and on his face. We're just going to take the materials that extra step, okay? And I'm going to try and bake this chainmail down to see what kind of effects we get, to see if it's going to look good enough to work. But I also want to try to use, I found some awesome chainmail inside Substance Painter. It's a smart material, and I kind of want to use that material inside of Substance just because I'm getting some stretched rings right here, and it doesn't look that great. I want the rings to kind of be as even as they possibly can be. So I really want to try and get the chainmail to look nice, okay? So but with the eyes, he suggested that I actually build them out. So I'm going to build them out, and I'm going to show you how to do it, okay? So I'm going to grab these eyes, and right now these eyes are quad spheres, okay? So if I go down in subdivision levels down to the lowest level, and they have this eye material assigned to them, so it's got this, you know, the really shiny eye material that looks like a disco ball. But oh, you were busy with learning box modeling in C4D. So they're actually going to be our neighbors at the Lightbox Expo, I come to find out. Cinema 4D is going to be right next door to us. So if you want me to ask them any questions, let me know. I like Cinema 4D, but I don't want to learn another package, you know? So my brain is too full. I can't shove any more in there. I am learning Blender, although that being said, but yeah, there's too many to learn, and they're all just tools. Your skills will travel with you. It doesn't matter what software you use, your skills will transfer. All you need to know is where the buttons and levers are. Okay. All right. It'll be nice. Become a video game, the Warblers video game, where you have to like smash them, like like that whack-a-mole game, smash a warbler game. Okay. So with these, what I want, if I'm going to build these out, I want to have poles at the ends, at the front and the back. That makes for the easiest build of eyes, okay? I was going to build them inside of Maya. I can actually show you. I started building them inside of Maya. I can actually show you how I would do it in Maya and how I would do it in ZBrush if you want to know how to do it in both places. But since most of you have ZBrush and that you don't have Maya, I was just going to show you how to do it in here. Okay, so what I want to do is insert, and I want to insert, I'm just going to insert anything. Any of these basic shapes works. I'm not going to use this basic shape as the actual eyeball itself. I'm just going to use it to replace it. These eyes look funky. And he looks like he's got a skirt on. That's awesome. Okay, so essentially I just want some temporary geometry there that I'm going to replace. So when you do this, you do not want to accidentally be on one of your subtools where you have a mesh or something that you want to keep because this is going to replace it. Okay, so you just want to make a temporary mesh, doesn't matter what it is. Then you open up the gizmo, you can send it home, reset it, and then click on this gear, and you'll see all these primitives up top right here. Okay, you have a sphere 3D and a polysphere. We want the sphere 3D. Click on that. Whoa, it makes this gigantic sphere apparently. Okay, and the reason I want to do that is because now it is adjustable with all of these cones. You can see all these cones everywhere. Okay, so these green cones will turn it into a hemisphere. Okay, so I want to pull this one all the way out. Come on, grab onto it. There we go. To make it an actual sphere. And then these blue and red cones, they change the vertical divisions and the horizontal divisions. Okay, so I want to make the H divisions go down to 16 and the vertical divisions to do the same. Let's just move them to 16. And the reason I'm choosing 16 is because it gives me a line right down the center like this. And if I look at it from the front, it's going to cut this in half right here. And it's going to cut it in half right here. And you can do 16 or 32, both of those work depending on how dense you want your eyeball to be. Since the eyeball is so small in the head, you're not really going to see the silhouette of the edges of the eyeball, but sometimes since there's so few faces in there, you can go down more. But basically what we're going to do is we're going to smooth these edges inside of Maya or Marmoset or whatever. So I'm going to keep them light at 16 like this. Okay, and then when you're done, what you can do is click on this gear and just hit Gizmo 3D. Oh, do I? Yeah, I have my Cintiq. It's right here. I'm just using my mouse for some reason. When I do like things that have to deal with numbers and precision, I don't know, I typically use my mouse. So you can probably hear it clicking because I have this this mini Yeti microphone that I bought to replace my larger Yeti microphone because my larger Yeti microphone kind of died. It did some weird things and made me sound like a deep voiced whatever. I don't even know. Okay. So no, it's not visible. I'm in my rental right now and I don't have my main camera. My main camera is sitting right here, but it's not turned on. I'm using a webcam that's right here that's sitting on top of my Cintiq facing me. So that's what you see right now is just me. And this is I'm just in a white room. It's like a hospital. So my house will be built by the end of next month. So by the end of October, I should be into my new place and I'm going to set up my new office. It should look like it did in my old place with the shelves with Infinity figures. I might do a little bit different design and stuff, but we'll see. Okay, so that's why I'm in this white. I look like an old Apple commercial. Okay, so let's. This eyeball is huge, so I want to scale it down. Till we see look at the sirloin sticking out the top. See his little head just sticking out there. Are there black curtains in here? No, all that's in here is it's just a white room. Yeah, if you want me to, I could. After it's built. I'm finally gonna. I've been wanting a home theater for a long time, so I'm finally making a home theater, and I want to sculpt some characters, and put it around kind of the screen. I know it's completely stupid and elaborate. It's totally nerdy, but I worked with the guys at Magic Wheelchair, right, and they have a CNC machine that cuts stuff out of foam. And I was talking to them at the ZBrush Summit and I was like, man, that would be so cool if I could design like the border to a theater screen, you know, like those old ornate Hollywood, you know, movie theaters with all the crazy crap around the screen. it would be fun to do just a whole bunch of different characters kind of melded together all the way around the the screen like that. So, Indy, hey, what's up, Indy? I had a question for you, and I was wondering, how do you overcome this? Do you ever get imposter syndrome? Every day, dude. Every day. so, so the thing is with imposter syndrome, right? I get it 2 times fold because first of all, every day it's like, you go to ArtStation, you're just like, oh man, I'm never gonna be that good. I look at all this stuff, and it's just absolutely incredible. And who am I to be doing this, right? I don't even know why I'm here or why I'm doing this. And then on top of that, I get the whole, who am I to be teaching this, right? I have to like convince myself on a daily basis that people want to learn what I have to talk about. Okay, so yes, I know imposter syndrome really really well. It's like it's like who am I? Who am I to be teaching this? So um, the how do I combat it? I kind of have to talk myself out of it. I kind of have to say, I am as good as I am today, and I'll just keep getting better because I'm trying, that kind of thing. And everybody, it's the hardest thing is it's not a race. You're not racing anybody, right? There are veteran people that are just leaving their careers now, and there's new people that are just coming into their careers today. So every single day is like that, and everybody is on their own path. So it's easy to compare yourself to others and where they are on their journey, but the hardest thing is you shouldn't compare yourself to them. You should just say, you know what, I want to aspire to be on that level, and that should be looked at as inspiration instead of looked at as I'll never get there. You know what I mean? Because you're on your own journey and you'll get there when it's time for you to be there, if that makes sense. This would make a good blog post, by the way. It's a great question. But yeah, everybody deals with imposter syndrome all the time. So it's just kind of one of those things. Okay, Angelo, I haven't always been. I don't, and I still need to grow. So I'm not. Everybody, like I said, everybody's at their own pace. I used to I couldn't get hired on at Avalanche for the longest time because my art wasn't good enough, and that's what I was told. So, yeah, it's just like I said, everybody's on their own journey. Okay, so I'm just trying to put this sphere and line it up with the eyes that are already there. I love how derpy he looks when his eyelids are kind of halfway closed. He's just kind of like, ugh. Yeah, Indy, like, yeah, even people at the absolute top of their game still have imposter syndrome. Like, I bet you Aaron Blaze, as good as he is, I'm sure he still would love to be better, right? Just yeah, just think about it like that. It's everybody goes through it. Doesn't matter who you are or what level you're at either. And it never, when it stops is the day you die. Unfortunately, that's when you stop getting better, right? You're getting better every single day, and I'm still learning new things. I'm learning Blender. I'm learning new techniques inside of ZBrush. I'm learning, and it's funny. Teaching this anatomy stuff has actually been making me better at anatomy because I just haven't really thought about it that deeply before. You know what I'm saying? So you feel like you're faking it? No, you just gotta put it out. Whatever you have, you gotta put it out there because you're only as good as you are today. So I just want, let's see, just this. Okay. I'm trying to fit this, and a good way to do it is to turn on transparency, and you can see this sphere inside the other sphere. And then scale it up into that to match the size of it. Okay. So it looks like my my original sphere got squished a little bit just from modeling, right? Okay, so I'm going to use the Z modeler to model out the actual eyeball itself. And I need to look at the size of the iris that I originally had. So let's hide this. It's quite a bit smaller. Okay, let's see. I'm going to hide just the head right here. Guy, I don't ever want to meet him because we'll have to fight. It's like the Skeksis, right? Speaking of Skeksis, have you guys been watching The Dark Crystal on Netflix? Oh my goodness, it's pretty good. Okay, so I just turned off dynamic subdivision because I want to work with the actual polygons themselves, and I'm going to start with the iris being a little bit larger than this, and I want to insert an edge loop right here. And that's going to be the outer edge of this iris. And then how eyes work is, I love how the teeth are, look at that guy. Oh, this is perfect. Okay, so let me hide this stuff so it's not distracting. Okay, so how an eyeball actually works is the iris is kind of a band of little muscles, little tendon fibers, right? That are all kind of going, and they shrink and grow like a lens of a camera, and they're actually kind of inset on kind of like a cone, an inverted cone going towards the inside of the eyeball. And when light comes down and it hits that iris, it will shade the upper part of it and it will highlight the lower part of it because it's a cone going towards the inside. So as the light's coming down, it's going to catch that right on the bottom of the surface, and that's why eyeballs kind of look the way they do. So you can either hand paint it to fake that, or you can model it in to actually look like a real eyeball. And I'm going to insert another edge loop to represent the pupils, or the pupil. And then I want to slide this one out, edge loop complete. So slide edge loop complete, and I can get these a little bit closer. Okay, now I want to assign some polygroups to these so I can move them around. Okay, so I'm going to hover over a face and hit polygroup, a single poly, but I'm actually going to try a poly loop. And what that does is, if you get close, it's kind of hard to see, but if you get close, there's a little orange line and it points a direction. And if I click in the direction that I want it to go, it's going to make a polygroup out of this whole entire thing. It won't do that on triangles, of course, because triangles don't really have a direction. But if you're on a quad, it's going to give you that direction. Okay, so I'm going to do it again to this one. But see how it says polygroup, polyloop, alt, new? Okay, so if I click it down and then I tap on alt, I can change colors of it like this. Okay, so that's kind of a nice way to assign colors. And then what I want to do is I do want to isolate this center right here. So I can come over here from the side if I'm super careful and select lasso, and hopefully I can capture just this piece. It looks like I missed some. So I'm going to invert it and then send those back, and I might have hidden or unhidden others. So let me turn on double to see if I did. Okay, looks like we just have the pupil. That's good. I'm going to hit Control W to put it in its own polygroup. So now we have the pupil, we have the iris, and we have the outer iris edge. Okay, so now that we have these polygroups, it'll make it really easy to manipulate and model these out. So if I show my gizmo and I hold down Control and tap on this blue polygroup, which is the pupil, I can push this in and it will essentially make that iris cone, okay? And it's saving project, and my project, I have a lot of tools in here, so it's gonna be a minute. Okay. Time to take a drink. Okay, so now I want to extrude the pupil in, because the pupil is essentially 100% black. When I say don't use black anywhere on your model, the only time I really use black is in the pupil, and a lot of times not even then. Okay, so oh, you've seen so many ways to model eyeballs. Yeah, there are so many ways. This is the way I like to do it, so take that with a grain of salt. Okay, Z modeler. I'm going to hover over a face, and then I'm going to hit extrude, polygroup all. Okay, you can do this with QMesh, but QMesh has a few other functions that could kind of trip you up a little bit. So just use extrude, polygroup all, select one of these. I'm gonna have to shrink my brush down so it actually grabs a face. You have to be on a face. There it goes. You can't have a white line showing. Okay. Okay. So you can see what is happening here, right? It's making this weird cone in the center. Why is it doing that? And the reason why is stupid, okay? It's stupid because, and I'm glad we're on a closed circuit television without Pixologic's prying eyes, but the way ZBrush creates spheres like this is they don't weld the pole together. This sphere is actually made of quads. Those blue triangles are not triangles, they're quads. Okay, so if I were to smooth this out, you can actually see there's like a ring coming out, and there's another one on the inside. Okay, so what I want to do, how do you fix that? Well, we need to weld. Okay, we need to weld the center so all the vertices in the center actually weld together. And it's the same on the back. These vertices are not welded together. They're just loose and they're quads. So if you ever run into that, super dumb, right? Yeah, it's crazy to me and I don't understand it, but it is what it is. So let's go, not mirror and weld, but just weld points right here. We're gonna try that and we're gonna see if extrude poly gets fixed. There it goes. See, now it's fixed. Yeah, yep. And it doesn't matter if you choose the sphere inside of the, the append this sphere right here, not the polysphere, the sphere 3D, this one. This sphere 3D, it has a sphere that does not have the poles welded. And same with inside the gizmo, inside this gear, and it's the same with the cone. The tip is not welded. So that's just an extra step you need to do to weld the points. Yeah, and it's an extra pain in the butt, okay? Okay, so I'm actually going to do this again, but I'm not going to extrude it in as far. I'm just going to push it in because I could take it all the way back, and sometimes people will actually like delete this out of there just so it's completely black, right? That's where illuminate is from the pole. I don't understand what that question is, Angelo, or suggestion. What are you saying? Is that where the illuminate is from the pole of the ZBrush sphere? Oh, it's the same with cylinders in Cinema 4D. With spheres inside of Maya, it doesn't do this. So anyway, after I've welded that, now I can push it in about that far. That's good. And this is just going to be solid 100% black inside here. So we're gonna get that, and it should work pretty well. Okay. You know what though? I'm trying to think, because I'm going to have to build out the cornea that goes over the top, and the cornea is essentially just a disc that sits over the top that represents the little bowing out of the clear portion of this. Okay, so if you look at it from the side, it just kind of goes down to here and then it goes flat. We actually need it to bubble out, and I like to keep that as a separate shape, a separate piece. But you need to have the exact same number of points around here so it will line up and it won't look weird. Okay, Yeah, it's totally a tiny little iris. It's a huge eye and a little iris, just a tiny little guy. Okay, so what I'm gonna do with this is, let's see. I'm, well, I want to, here's what we'll do, okay? Because I want this, I should have duplicated it before I started digging into the eyeball, right? So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna duplicate it now, and this will become the eyeball itself, because what happens when you duplicate is it gets rid of history. Okay, the history goes away. So when I duplicate it, I can go back to the original. The original still has all of that history. So I can roll this back until, you know, something like this. Mike, typically in just sometimes I've built it where the cornea is actually stitched into the eyeball itself, and the iris is floating back there behind it. But I've gotten, well, I don't know what the actual best way to build an eyeball as far as that goes. Like I said, I hardly ever build eyeballs this way. This is a little out of my league, you know. I've seen it where the cornea is floating, and I've seen it where the iris is floating. And I've actually seen it where the eyeball is completely built out, where there's two spheres on top of each other. One has the cornea in it and the other has the iris in it. So, but that's more for film, because in film you don't really care about the poly count, but in games you kind of have to care about it a little bit. So for this build, I'm going to have the cornea floating, okay? But yeah, that is something to consider. Either have the cornea floating, the iris floating, or, you know, build the entire sphere inside of a sphere, and that works too. So, okay, but for this one, I just want to break this off. Okay, so we're gonna go turn it to the side like this, and I just want to isolate this piece right here. Okay, and now I can delete hidden. And now we kind of have our cornea, but I want to insert a single edge loop closer so that I can make it kind of bubble out, right? I can take this edge and say transpose edge loop complete, click on that edge, and it's going to mask off everything that's not that edge and give me a gizmo right on that edge, so I can just grab it and kind of start pulling it out. And I can do the same thing with this line. I'm just looking at it from the side because I want to pull it out like this, and then the center point. So the center point, I can just mask it off and invert it, grab the gizmo, hold down Alt, tap on the center of it, and then pull it out. Let's look at it from the side. So it's just kind of this floating disc. And now that should be lined up with the eyeball that I just built, which it is. Okay, so this will be our cornea right here. Okay, so if I make all the edges smooth inside of Maya, it should be just fine. So Jim, which way is the best to build for games? I'm going to ask Brendan, but I think this is the best way, because if you think about materials, okay, this is going to have to be a transparent glass shader to be on this cornea. If I apply it to the entire eyeball, it's not going to be it would add transparency to that entire eyeball, and then the gloss would just get complicated material-wise, okay? Because I would have to have an entire sphere encapsulating that eyeball that included the cornea that I would have to apply that glass shader on. And since it's so close to the surface of the eyeball underneath, it could cause some what's called Z-fighting, where it will cause a flicker between the two, especially with the transparent material. So if I build the eyeball like this, and I just apply a material to the eyeball itself that doesn't have transparency, but it has high gloss, that will still get that you know, the very tight reflective spot, not reflection, but highlight, the really tight highlight that's on eyes, right? It will have that, and you can set the reflectivity of it just fine. And you can apply the material to the entire eyeball, which will work really well. That way I don't have to apply the transparent glass material to the entire eye. I just have to apply it to the cornea, and it works really well. Okay, does that make sense? Okay, and I need to weld the center, otherwise we're gonna have problems. So let's do the weld points. I just remembered to do that. Does that make sense, you guys? Why? And I honestly, I just remembered that as I was thinking about which way would be better. And material-wise, in my opinion, this would be way better. Okay, so I'm gonna name this cornea, and I'm gonna name this eyeball. I'm gonna actually name it eye underscore low underscore eye. The naming for marmoset's really weird, but eye low eye. Or I should name it eyes low eyes. It's double. So that makes sense to you guys? Okay. So these eyeballs will be right here. These will be the high. So let's rename eye, high, eye. There we go. And this cornea would actually, I'm not going to be baking it, but eye, low, cornea. There we go. Yeah, Tom. Yeah, for sure. For sure. Yeah, it actually would help in film as well when not doing close-ups. So the only problem that this will cause, okay, or could cause, is a very hard edge around the cornea where it meets the eyeball. Okay, that's going to be the area where it's going to cause some grief potentially. And that's also going to cause some grief where the highlight that's rolling around on the surface of this cornea is going to hit that edge, and it could make it stretch and be kind of weird. So just need to kind of do a few things to combat that. And the way you can combat it is just to keep things nice and smooth. So I'm just going to look at this one more time, and I think this will work just fine. If I turn on dynamic subdivisions, see, it's actually kind of nice and clean. So also normal maps really, really help. Like if you have a high resolution cornea and a low resolution cornea, and then you bake the high to the low, it will actually take the normal maps into consideration when it you know, puts it on in the game. So I need to make a high resolution cornea actually. So I'm going to duplicate this, rename it high, okay, and then actually subdivide it down. But so one thing, if you have an open edge like this, if I turn on subdivisions, you can see that it's going to shrink, okay? I don't want it to shrink. I want the edges to go all the way out to the edge, so when I bake the high to the low, I'm not going to have a little gap in the normal maps, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to crease those outer edges first. So let's go to the ZModeler, hover over an edge, go crease, and let's do crease. Oh, I need to be on an edge. Crease, edge loop complete, and then just click on this outer edge, and you can see that it creases. Now when I hit D, it stays, it does kind of collapse the entire thing, but it doesn't shrink the edges inwards. It doesn't shrink the entire thing, okay? So then I can just hit apply on there on this dynamic, and that should be the bake from the high to the low. Okay, so if we look at just this without the high, it does have this pole here, which this pole you can kind of paint out inside of Photoshop or whatever, or inside of Substance Painter. You can help that by painting it out. I'm gonna hit weld points. Oh, it's already done. Okay, and if these points weren't welded, you would most likely see a hole right here. So it would kind of split when you subdivide it. It would make a little hole and you'd see that. And that's just caused from the points not being welded. So, okay. The transparent sphere can also cast shadows when there are no shadows. That's true. So it's just having a cornea that's floating like that is just really nice as far as trying to manage everything that's happening. You know, like you can really focus on, like I can make the cornea not cast any shadows at all, right? Where the rest of the eyeball does. It's like takes on self-cast shadows and that kind of stuff. And anyway, it's just, it really helps with organizing all that kind of stuff. Okay, so now that we have these eyes, here's the thing to consider, okay? And a lot of times I'll actually do this, where I will just have the character have a single eye for the longest time, because basically what I'm trying to do is I want to bake this eye and do everything to it that I can just with one eye. If I have two and they're mirrored, their UVs are going to occupy the same space, and when I'm going to bake them inside a marmoset, those stacked UVs might cause grief with each other. Yeah, I think Sean was saying that they might have fixed that somehow, so it doesn't, so it ignores stacked UVs. I don't know if you've done any more research on that, Sean, or not, but it's usually I avoid stacking UVs because when you go to bake, it's trying to bake on two different UV sets, and it will cause just holes in your maps. Okay, so right now what I want to do is I'm going to delete one of, like, this eyeball right here. Okay, so I'm going to hit auto groups and then just delete it. Turn off symmetry and just hide it. Okay, I got to be on. Okay. Hold on a second. Get out of here. Okay. And then I don't know if it has subdivision levels, but I'm going to delete hidden. Yeah. Okay. So this is a trick as well. If you ever have subdivision levels on your objects and you want to delete something out of there, the easiest way to do it is, instead of like trying to mess with your subdivision levels, what works best is actually use group split. Okay. So you can show both of these, clear the mask, and just put the things that you want to delete in their own polygroup and everything else in its own polygroup, okay? In this case, I only have two polygroups, so I want to keep this one and delete this one. I'm going to go group split, okay? And what that does is that keeps the subdivision levels, okay? So now I have two eyeballs instead of just, I have my eyeballs separate into two separate subtools. Now I can just delete the one I don't want, which is this one. Right? That's how you can delete something out of a subtool that you don't want, is just split it out of there. Okay. So now I have my high and I have my low. And when it comes to baking this high to this low, it's not going to work very well, because now I've built this eye out, and it's basically the iris has been built out away from the envelope. So most likely I'm going to build this eyeball in the material by hand inside of Marmoset, and I will most likely not use the bake materials. But what I will use is the smoothness of this to help with my normal maps, okay? So I'm actually going to duplicate. I'm just thinking about this just now, as this is kind of the workflow I go through. I'm like, oh, wait a minute, that high isn't going to work because it's flat, and now my high has, or my low has an iris. So I actually want to build this iris out as a new high resolution version of it, and I want to build the bevels out in between the iris and the eyeball itself. So I'm going to duplicate this, and this will become my new high resolution eyeball. Okay, now if I turn on dynamic subdivisions, you can see what's going to happen. It's not going to look good, okay? So this is not going to work for my high resolution model. So what I want to do is I want to put in some support edges that will give us some really nice bevels, but I don't want to put those support edges in the low resolution eyeball. Does that make sense? Because I don't need those extra polys in my low resolution version, okay? No, split hidden doesn't work as well as group split when it comes to doing that. Okay, I think split hidden. I'm trying to remember if it I think you might be able to use both, but I think split hidden has slightly different properties to it when you use it. I'm trying to remember. I always use group split, and I can't. It's been so long I can't remember why, but yeah. Okay, so basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to insert a bunch of support edges. Okay, and for this I am going to use my pen so I can get in here and essentially hover over here, an edge, and do insert single edge loop. I can also use bevel. So let's do a bevel edge loop complete. And I'm just going to bevel this like this. Whoops, let's do it again. It's snapping. I have to be far enough away. There it goes. Okay. And I'm going to bevel this down inside of here. Okay. And then I'm going to do one more right here. Now this one is tricky because I don't want to move the edge away from where the cornea is touching. Okay. So yeah, delete hidden does not work. Delete hidden doesn't work with subdivision levels. It's one of those things that just doesn't work with subdivision levels, which is why it's best to stay within dynamic subdivisions for as long as possible before you actually add the subdivisions in for real, because there are a lot of functions inside of ZBrush that don't actually work with real subdivision levels, and delete hidden is one of them. Okay. So, okay. So let's take a look at this cornea and see where it touches. Okay, so the cornea is hitting this row right here. So I just want to make sure I don't move this row. Otherwise, it's not going to line up with the cornea and I'm going to have a gap right there. Okay, so I can insert a loop on this side or on this side, but I can't bevel it because that's going to move that edge away from where the cornea is touching. So I just need to be careful with that. Let's solo this again. So this line right here is where the cornea touches. So what I'm going to do instead is I'm just going to insert an edge loop and bring it up to meet that edge, like so. Okay, and then with this one, I'm just going to slide it, edge loop complete, and I'm going to make it have 3 edges right here. And then I can hit dynamic subdivisions and take a look at this, turn this off, and we can see what kind of beveled edges we're getting. Okay, so this beveled edge is looking really nice right now. This one's kind of loose because it's only 2 edges. So I'm going to insert one more edge loop to just help it out. Okay, but I don't want to put it right in the center because here, if I do, I'll show you what happens. Okay, if I put it right there in the center and then hit it, it becomes super sharp. I can still use it that way, but it's just not as good because you can kind of see how it comes down and it's flat. I guess I could move it out in one direction. Let me see. I'm going to slide these away from each other just a little bit. Edge loop complete, just to give it a little more. And then I want to transpose this ring. Where's my gizmo? There you are. Okay, I want to hold down Alt, center the gizmo in the middle of this, and then I want to move that edge. See how it's flat? It's kind of flat. It's not, it doesn't follow the curvature. So I want to move it out on its own. And see how it says, if I hover over this yellow cube, it says control to inflate. I can hold down control and just bring it out a little bit. And that's just moving it out on its own normals, okay? You can use split hidden if you're on the first subdivision level. Yes, okay, that's it. That's it, actually, Corinne. Thank you so much. Okay, the reason why I use group split rather than split hidden is the exact reason that Corinne just said. So what happens if you split hidden is ZBrush will rebuild your subdivision levels. It will take your lowest and it will rebuild them. And that can be a very bad thing because you could possibly lose some detail and stuff like that. It will make it smooth and you'll kind of lose some of your sculptural detail. Whereas group split, you can split it at the highest subdivision level and it will not rebuild your subdivision levels. So yeah, thanks for reminding me about that. Yeah, that's totally the reason why. I just forgot. Okay, so for this one, I want to just add one more. So insert single edge loop. And there's a lot of functions inside of ZBrush that'll actually rebuild your mesh when you absolutely don't want it to. Because it will make it look like butter. You know, it'll smooth it right out. Okay, so check that out. Those are some nice crispy bevels right there now. See how it catches the light across there? And this is the old school way of creating bevels. Kind of the new way is creating crease levels. Like I talked about in the course, setting your crease levels to like a 3 will create bevels similar to this. But the problem is the bevels won't transfer crease-wise over to like Marmoset or Maya or anything like that. You'll actually have to subdivide it and export the subdivided version of it into, say, Marmoset or something like that, okay? So, okay, so now that we have this, I can actually apply the subdivision levels and then go add a few more subdivision levels. So we're at about 385,000 right now, and you can see that it's nice and crispy. Okay, so this will give us our nice normal maps, okay? You actually never knew about the group split. I usually duplicate before splitting and project it back. Yep. So yeah, that's exactly why. Yeah, group split works really, really well. It will not rebuild your subdivision levels. Okay, so there you go. Tip of the day. All right. Hold on 1 second. Okay. So now we have high and now we have low. So I should rename this. This is I, high, I. Say that 3 times fast. I, low, I. Okay. Get rid of that 1. You do everything the difficult way. It's just, honestly, it's just a matter of knowing what, like I said, what buttons to push, what levers to pull. It's and it's crazy how well your skill level or your skills will transfer from program to program. For example, my friend Ryan Peterson. Okay, Ryan Peterson is one of the most skilled sculptors I've ever witnessed. Right, he worked with us at Avalanche for a while, and he's worked on films and horror films and all sorts of stuff, but he is a traditional clay sculptor, and he does stuff. If you've ever seen those life-size busts of, like, say, Deadpool. Here, let me see if I can find it. Okay, so here we go. I don't know who this guy is, but he's not Ryan. Oh, this is Ryan right here. Okay, so this is a life-size Deadpool sculpt. Okay, I'm trying not to put it behind my video here. And this is Ryan right here. He's got a cool hat like me. That's what makes us cool. If you get a hat like this, you'll be a sculpting madman or woman. Anyway, this is Ryan. He's working on this Deadpool bust. I was lucky enough to see it in person when he was working on it. But the reason why I wanted to talk about Ryan was because he is also a ZBrush sculptor, and like on his very first day using ZBrush, he was amazing with the basic, like the standard brush in ZBrush. He knew nothing about ZBrush, but his knowledge of form and surface and everything like that just transferred because it's just a tool. Okay, so hey Jeremy, you're going to Lightbox? Awesome. Yeah, please come up to me and tell me who you are and remind me, because I'm gonna. That's what I'm completely worried about, is people coming up to me and saying, "Hey, I'm this person," and I almost want to say, "Show me your work so I know who you are," because I don't put faces with names very well. Anyway, I just wanted to bring that up because, like I said, skills transfer. Like recently, the Flip Normal guys. Okay, those two guys, Morton and I can't remember the other dude's name. They've worked in film for a long time, and they have been teaching themselves Blender in this new sculpting branch. And like the first thing they sculpted was incredible. So it's just a matter of honing your artistic skills, and you'll just be getting better as a sculptor. And ZBrush is just a tool. So when you talk about like group split and split hidden and things like that, those are just ways that you are getting more efficient at using that tool, but you're not necessarily increasing your art skills that way. It's just speeding yourself up. That's why I always say you don't necessarily need a Cintiq. A Cintiq is just going to speed up your workflow. It's not going to make you a better artist. Okay, so what's going to make you a better artist is studying forms, studying proportions, relationships, silhouettes, and things like that. So that is where your focus should be 100%. And then everything else is just like learning the tool to help you, do the art itself. Okay, so that's kind of how I view it anyway. There's this Villafane Studios. If you guys have ever seen him, he does sculpting out of pumpkins, and at the same time he'll do sculptures out of sand. He just sculpted this gigantic dinosaur out of sand, and it's the coolest thing ever. But sculpting skills transfer. ZBrush is just a tool. Okay, there you go. There's my rant. That could be another podcast. All right. Yep. Brute force sculptor. You can do the most amazing things with the most basic of tools inside of ZBrush, and Blender for that matter. As soon as you know how to like push the quote unquote clay around, you can do amazing things without having to know the entire program, the interface, all that stuff. These brushes just help you get there faster, but you can absolutely make amazing things with just the basic brushes. So, okay, but everybody thinks it's the brushes that that makes you awesome. Okay, so, but your knowledge, now you have a knowledge of how an eye works, the working eye, how it works. So you can take that and you could take that into another program, it doesn't matter, and make it work. So, hey, what's up, CyberChris? Yeah, pumpkin sculptures are so cool. It's funny because I just said, the tools don't make the sculptor, but having better tools absolutely helps. And I really want to pick up those Villafane pumpkin sculpting tool set. It just looks amazing. Just because it would help you get further faster, right? Yeah, what sculpting brush do you use? All of them. Oh man. Okay, so let's see. So now we have all of these. We have our eye built. If I were to do this inside of Maya, basically I just wanted to show you really quick how you would do it. So essentially you would go to create, and you can go to polygon primitives and then go to sphere, and then click on this little cube right here, and that's going to give you this pop-up. Okay, and let me go to wireframe here. It's going to give you here's your radius, your H divisions, your vertical divisions, and then what direction you want it to spawn in the world facing, and if you want to create UVs or not. And I usually select pinched at the poles because it just kind of helps me fix the UVs after the fact. Then I can just hit apply, and here is our sphere that comes in with UVs on it. I'll just hit close, and I would essentially just manipulate this sphere. Let me see. I'm going to rotate this. I love the channel box on here because it allows me to rotate things by typing in numbers. Like I can just rotate this 90 degrees. And I don't know why it cuts the UVs right here. That's just really strange, instead of down the middle. But I'm going to be redoing the UVs on here anyway. Anyway, I'm going to hide this, hide him. So we're just looking at this sphere here. And essentially what I do is I just turn on the modeler, which is right here, and it has this multi-cut tool. Okay, and I can just hover over these edges and hold down Control and just cut in these a couple, you know, just essentially do exactly the same thing I did in ZBrush, almost exactly. So yeah, I can just kind of chop these up, and then slide is hidden. You don't have slide over here as far as I know. Slide comes from double clicking this ring, and then let's see, I'm trying to remember what it is. So shift right clicking on the edge, and then here's slide edge tool right here, and you use middle mouse to move it in and out like this. Same kind of thing. So you can see I'm doing the exact same functions inside of Maya that I was doing in ZBrush, but like the path to do it is different, okay, just slightly different. And so if I want to, gosh, I'm trying to select these edges here. Let me turn these off. I just want edges, or faces. I wish I could select. I want to make sure, yeah, I didn't want to accidentally select the ones on the back side, but then all you have to do is just extrude this in like this, and then you can grow your selection. Whoops. Trying to think of how. And then you can just pull this in. Whoops. I thought this was selected. I'm struggling today with Maya. I can just double select this one and pull it in to make that bevel. Let's pull this whole thing in. Anyway, I would essentially do the exact same thing that I just did in ZBrush, just with the poly modeling tools inside of Maya. And then, so to get UVs on this guy is, oh, that's right, Shift plus period. That's right, grow selection. I forgot, thank you. I was trying to do the bracket keys instead of the arrow keys, the period keys. I'll just pull this back in space. Anyway, and then, you know, just continue to add all the rings until it looked basically similar to what I was just doing. Now, to cut edges, what you do is you just double click this line right here, because with the UVs on this guy, I need to bring in, let me just bring in those the pieces from ZBrush, and we'll just do it for real. Okay, so I want the eyes low and I want the cornea low. I don't want it renamed under, I don't want it 1. Okay, so let me just show these two, the low and the low eye. Okay, these two things. And then I want to export them. Let me see. Let me turn off group. I'll just export them individually. So let's go export, OBJ, 3D character workshop, student only live stream, OBJs. Let's call this ILO-I. If you already named them, it makes it easier to export them. And then ILO cornea, export. You got to make sure you turn that group button off when you export OBJs. Otherwise, inside Maya, it's going to break them apart, like almost shatter them. It's another stupid thing that ZBrush does, and I don't understand why. But I've talked to the ZBrush guys, and I'm like, guys, can you just make group turned off by default? And they're just like, we wish we could, but it affects so many other things that it has to be on by default. I'm just, okay, whatever. I guess we just have to deal with it. Okay, so let's bring Sirloin back, and we're gonna delete this eyeball and then import those two. Let's go student only live stream, OBJs, and sort by date, these two. Let's do cornea first. And it should put that up here. There it is. Okay, right where it needs to be, the size it needs to be. And then import ILO-I, and it put it right here. Looks like it's peeking out of his head just a little bit, which is okay. We can move it later. But what we want to do is we want to add some UVs to this. So I'm just gonna throw some UVs on here just to get some UVs on here. And then same with this one. And how you do that in Maya is you can just hit any of these, and it doesn't really matter. You just have to have UVs on it in order to make the UVs in the first place. But so for this one, let me go to UV shell, and then we'll go to the UV toolkit, and we can just hit unfold, and it's just going to unfold this how we want it. And then the same with the eyeball, but with the eyeball, let me hide this again. Oops. Okay, hide. Go away for a minute. And here is his old eyeballs, right? The one I was working on. So I'm going to delete that. So this is the new eye. Okay, and it doesn't have the UVs where I need it to be. So I'm just going to select this edge, double click it, and then underneath the cut and sew, I can just hit cut. And it's going to make a new UV seam right here. Then if I just go UV shell over here, select the front, hit unfold, it'll make it this big circle. Unfold, make it this big circle. Okay, now I have these two circles. I want the front of this eyeball to have most of the texel density. Okay, we talked about texel density a while back. And I'm just going to fit it inside this 0 to 1 coordinate as good as I can. Let's move this out of the way. And then we're going to shrink it down a little bit so it's within these edges as best as it can be. Okay, so that, and you could even, now sometimes you can do this, okay? You could even scale this outside of the UV coordinates like this, okay? And there is a good possibility it's going to tile, and you would see the iris come in up here, over here, down here, and over here. But if you think about a character and a character's eyeball and how far the range of looking can go, right? As far as the range of his eyeball rotation, it's not going to rotate far enough that the iris, well, sometimes it will, but the iris will come out from behind the side of the eye or inside the eye where you'll see it tile. So sometimes, and I'm not sure if Substance Painter would cry at me for doing this, but where I really want to focus all of my texel density is inside this iris right here, because that's where most of the information is going to be. So I want to scale this up as much as possible without crossing this into the center, because that's where the UVs are going to tile. You can think about this grid as a tiling UV, okay? So if you can kind of imagine where that iris is going to be right here, you can just kind of go as big as you can, maybe even to the center of the neighbors, and it'll show an iris right here on the edge of this eyeball, which is in the middle of where the eyeball splits. So fingers crossed, he won't look far enough that the eyeball, that you'll see the iris come in from the side. Yeah, Resident Evil, right? Okay, so I'm going to take this one, and we're just gonna, this is the back of the eyeball, okay? So I can scale this down really far and just park it in the corner right here, because that will just be on the white of the eye, and we just need it to take on the same the same material, so it'll have the same highlight and stuff like that. So it's really not going to matter if it's shrunken down like that. We just don't want it to cross into the iris. I can make it a little bit bigger. Okay, well, we just don't want it to cross into the iris space. Okay, now we can grab the cornea and we can just center this, and it's gonna have its own material. It's gonna have that transparent glass material, so it can fill this whole space. Okay. Do you ever scale up the center rings on the UV map to maximize textile density? I don't. And the reason why I don't is because sometimes I want to put little tiny, well, either a gradient or some kind of shadow or some kind of like, I don't go as far as putting blood vessels or anything like that in there. But if you do that and you scale it up, it's going to compact or compress all of that UV space around your iris. And then you're kind of painting yourself into a corner, and it's not going to allow you to fit those details into that space because it's going to be squished, right? So it's best to kind of, you can kind of squish that outer ring a little bit if you wanted to. That's not a bad idea actually, but as long, you can do whatever you want to it as long as you don't see it. That's the key. That's the goal, is as long as you can't see it, it doesn't matter. So there are some things like say inside of sirloin shoulder, right? Inside there, where you'll never see it, you could take those faces and almost scale them into oblivion, and it would not matter because you'll never see it. It would essentially make that map have like 1 pixel on it that just gets full of whatever color it's getting full of, just 1 pixel. So you can do little sneaky things like that, and it doesn't really make that big of a difference. Again, since this is going to be just having a glass material on it, we don't care about it too much. We can just fill in that whole texture space like that. But yeah, you could essentially take these UV edges like this and scale them down and do the same thing. We can try it and see how it works. And scale these down a little bit. And what that's going to do is that's going to stretch around these edges right here. I'll do it one more time just to kind of shrink it in. Okay, so I think that should be okay. Maybe one more. Like this. We'll see. And it's funny because when you actually UV something inside of ZBrush, it will do this very thing. It will just kind of let the fall off happen like this, and that comes from like a planar map. So see this map right here is called planar. So create UVs from planar. That means you can set your camera up to shoot planarly down here, and you can see what I'm talking about, how the faces are pretty big right here and they get smaller as they wrap around the sphere in perspective, and that's essentially what we're trying to mimic right here. And that is essentially the UV map that you want. So yeah, you're right as far as that goes. You can make it do that and not have a problem with it. But yes, it will stretch and smear on these edges, which hopefully we won't see and won't care about. Okay. So I think that's good. His eye's done. Let's unhide him. And I just want to move this around. Well, I don't want to move it here because you don't want to move your low resolution anything inside of Maya, because as soon as you do, it's going to go away from your high resolution. Okay, so you want the high resolution model to be in the same space when you bake it, or else you're going to mess it up, right? And then I don't know if Lucky is here, or I think Lucky was talking about, or somebody was asking about hard edges versus soft edges. And you can only really do that inside of a program like Maya, right? So if you look at, like, say his chest piece, for example, I just wanted to demonstrate the hard and soft edges on him. So if I go to Edge and I select these edges right here, you can basically, and this is how it worked, I want to say in the olden days, right? When you didn't bake maps and you wanted a hard edge, you would select the edges like this, and then you would go to, I think it's under Mesh Display, Harden Edge. It should, oh, I think the normals might be locked on here. Let me select the entire thing and unlock the normals on it first. So unlock normals, and that will kind of unlock everything. It only works on vertex. Oh, do I have to go to vertices? Okay, hold on. Okay, there we go. So it made all of the edges hard inside of Maya now. See how this looks like it does inside of ZBrush, okay? It's going to show you all the faceted edges. And the reason why is just because I turned all the edges to hard edges. But if I select this whole thing and I go Mesh Display, Soften Edges, it's going to soften everything. And now you can see it kind of looks, it looks like it has more polygons, even though it doesn't, except for in areas like this, right? So, all right, take care, Ikaruga. Thanks for hanging out. Okay, so now I'm going to go to Edge. Now that we've softened everything, let me just, whoops. I just want to select these again. And I want to just show you what hard edges look like the old-fashioned way. Okay, so Mesh Display, Harden Edge, and there it goes. So if you ever have a mesh and you're trying to soften and harden edges and it just isn't working, make sure you select your entire model, go to Mesh Display, and hit Unlock Normals. And that will just make it so it just releases whatever assignment it has on there. Okay, so let's go back to here. And now you can see this is how soft and hard edges were done back in the day. And it's still done in games like Warcraft, phone games, things like that. This is how you soften and harden edges without using a normal map, okay? Now, that being said, you can use soft and hard edges in conjunction with a normal map, but I do not recommend it. I recommend letting your normal map do the heavy lifting. Don't start doing soft and hard edges along with normal maps, because then it becomes human error, where most likely you're going to run into, oops, I forgot to harden this edge, or you have, it's kind of like UVs, you'll accidentally lose your soft and hard edges, and then you'll go to like bake your maps and it's not set up the way you originally had it, and then you're just like, why isn't this working? Because when you put the normal map that has been baked on a mesh that has soft and hard edges, you will need to keep those soft and hard edges on your low that you then apply that normal map to in order to keep that function working. So just know I would just soften the entire character if you can, okay? So don't do this unless you're doing a hand-painted super low resolution character that has soft and hard edges. That's the only reason I would say use this. Plus, you'll see that the hard edges are very, very crisp, and it also shows you faceting very easily. You can see the facets in there. I mean, I didn't harden the edges in between the faces to make it even more facety, but you can see the facets in there, and it just kind of, I would avoid it if you can, and just let the normal maps work. Okay, so anyway, somebody was asking about that, and I thought I'd demo it really quick. So there you go. Okay, so now that we have this, I just recorded a video for Corinne, not Corinne, sorry, let me see, what is her name? It is Caitlin, and not the Caitlin that makes the Gremlins, but a different Caitlin. So she was asking, she's the one doing the dog that is Thor. So it's the dog with the Thor hammer. Hey, what's up, Tunimeter? And she was trying to copy her UVs from her low to her high. And first of all, I was wondering why she's wanting to do that. And second of all, what she was doing was she had a low resolution mesh that she has subdivided, and that low resolution mesh had UVs on it, which is good, and then it had subdivisions on it, which is fine, but those two things don't necessarily need to go hand in hand. You can see inside of ZBrush how I'm handling sirloin stuff, where I have a high and I have a low. But there is such a thing as having the low be the lowest resolution of the high resolution subtool. Okay, that's something that I do and use on seldom occasion. I don't use it very often, but I use it on certain occasions where, like with Kate, the only time I really used it on her was if I built out the low poly object that I knew I was going to use as the low poly object for the game, and then the subdivided version for the high resolution object, kind of like what I did with this eyeball here. But as you can see, it doesn't always work, because just for this example right here, I added a few edge loops to create really nice bevels for my high resolution object, which instantly made the low resolution object not work for the in-game, if that makes sense. Okay. Now for film, you can use the high and the low, the high for the low, whatever, because you're not baking maps at all. You're just using it. You're using the beveled edge version for the final render. And that's kind of the difference between games and film, is all of the support edges that you add in there stay in there when you render, and it keeps it really nice and tight. But with games, you don't get that luxury, unfortunately. So you have to create two, and then you have to create a normal map that creates the difference between the two objects, and that's what we're working with here. But with Kate, I did use her low as her high in her face, in her head. Okay, so I just want to load that up really quick. Okay. If you guys want to see it, let's see. Okay. This is going to make the file even slower to save because I'm loading this in. Okay, so here's Kate with her low. Now, I did split out her low face after the fact. So I do have a low resolution version and a high resolution version, and the low is also the low of the high. I know that's super, super confusing, but I'm going to show you right now. The body, the head. Where are you, head? There we are. Okay. So this head right here. Okay, so this head, you can see that it is the low. Okay, so after I built the Dynamesh version of her, if you watch back in the course, I took her over to 3D Coat, retopologized her, then I took it into Maya, and then I built out the mouth interior inside of there, okay? And then, since I had the mouth interior, I wanted that mouth interior in my high resolution version. So what I did is I just took this low resolution version, subdivided it up. Now it was my high resolution version, and then I just painted the colors on, right? And then I sculpted it, and I made it look the way it does right now. Okay, so that it's just kind of different techniques for different ideas and what you're trying to do with it. Okay, so the low became the high and vice versa, and then I just went back down and split off the low to actually become the low that I would bake the maps to. Okay, so let's see. On occasion, I see people rework the topology of a UV sphere and quadrify the tries at the poles. Do you feel it's worth the effort in most cases? I will see people do that on the corneas, okay, but not on the irises inside. And the reason why, and you're totally right, is the corneas, and I might even do it with Sirloin's corneas, but as you could see with Sirloin in his corneas, is it creates a pole right here. See this pole? So when I subdivide it down, that pole remains. If you have a polysphere cap on there, that pole will go away because it's made of all quads. But instead of one pole here, you'll get 4 poles where the quads meet and split and go down each side. Okay, so those poles will either be out here or inside right here. But it does create a nicer surface for that highlight to slide around. And that is a good idea to do. I might do it with this, we'll see. But for now, I'm just going to use, excuse me, I'm just going to use the one with the pole. Okay, so let's start prepping this so we can start baking it. Okay, I'm just going to go through here and make sure that all the UVs are good to go, all of the lows are good to go, and all the highs are named properly, so I can get them into Marmoset and start baking everything out. Okay, so let's see, it's 226 for me. Let's go back to Maya, and I want to, let's see. This is the point where I'm always like, okay, how do I want to split these up? And do I want to split them up all inside of Maya? Do I want to split them up all inside of ZBrush? It just completely depends on where I'm at, what I'm comfortable with, and where I want to export them out of. When I did Zenyatta, I did everything inside of Maya. When I did Kate, I did everything inside of ZBrush. And you can absolutely do everything inside of Blender, inside of Cinema 4D. It really doesn't matter where you prep everything, as long as everything is named properly and you can export it. That is the beauty, honestly, of being a character modeler, is usually companies don't care where you make your characters. I know on portfolios or resumes or whatever, when people are asking what do you use, it honestly, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter, because in the end, what you're doing is you're handing the rigging department your model, and it all it has to be is an object, an OBJ file with UVs and with textures. It doesn't matter where you make that. It really doesn't. If you think about Overwatch, the studio in Germany, Airborne Studios, that does a whole bunch of Overwatch skins, they primarily use 3D Studio Max for their skins. In-house, they use Maya. I used Maya, and they all use ZBrush at one point or another, but I typically use Maya in my workflow. In-house, they use Maya. There are people that use Blender. It doesn't matter. People use Modo. It really, I can't say that enough. It doesn't matter where you create your stuff as a modeler. Now, where it does matter is when you start to rig, you need to rig the model. Well, if you're a rigger, not if you're a character modeler, but if you're going to get into rigging, you need to rig your model wherever the animators are going to animate it in. Okay, so that's the only time it starts to matter, is when. And then the last thing that needs to matter is your scale. Your character's scale needs to match the world scale that everything is in. Okay, that's the last thing. Okay, all right, Ronald, thanks for hanging out. Hopefully you learned something today. I'm going kind of slow with this guy, but there's so much stuff to kind of cover that I didn't really nitpickily cover inside of the original workshop. So I really want to go through and talk about all this stuff. So, okay, so let's, I want to start to split him up in the channel box. Let's see, sorry, in the outliner, so I can make sure he has like all the parts that match all the parts inside of ZBrush, so I can match the highs to the lows, and I can have them with UVs on them. Okay, so basically I'm just going to go into here and just turn these into kind of chunks. Okay, so bear with me a little bit, and I could bring him into I could totally bring him into ZBrush and do the same thing. So it really doesn't matter which way I do it, just as long as it works. So maybe I will, just so, because don't most of you have ZBrush and you don't have Maya? Where do you want me to do this? Maybe I'll get feedback from you guys. Hey, what's up, Daniel? Let's see. I'm gonna combine the eyes, cornea, and everything with the body here. Maybe I'll bring it over into ZBrush. With UV space, but are you using separate channels for each quadrant of that UV layout? Yeah, that's it. So each of these quadrants represent a material that we're gonna do in inside of Marmoset, or not Marmoset, Substance Painter, okay, and Marmoset too. But So I'm essentially going to have 5 materials, and I'm going to have one for the body, one for the face or head, one for the chainmail, one for the eyes, and one for the corneas. Okay. All right. ZBrush. Cool. I'll just do it in ZBrush. Okay. So I just want to combine these together and then delete the history. Delete all by type history. And what that's just going to make him lean. Okay. Because it deletes all the history that I've done with him. And I'm going to save this file. Okay. And then I will export this out of here. Okay. And back into ZBrush. So export all, back into ZBrush. I was hoping you guys would say ZBrush because I'll do it over there. OBJ, I'm just going to call him Sirloin UV 02. Let's call it 02. Okay, so let's go back into ZBrush. And okay, I'm just going to move these the low cornea into lows and the low eye into lows. So everything is in here and all the highs are in here. That's kind of how I organized him into these folders. All the low resolution meshes are in this lows folder, and then all the high resolution meshes are in all of these folders. So I want to save this out as Sirloin 33. Crazy, we're up to 33. And then I want to reset the project. Okay, I'm going to double click on this because that will clear out all the tools, the Warble, the Kate, and everything I had over there. And then load him back in, Sirloin 33. And I'm going to close this shelf. Okay, so we have this. And now what I want to do is I'm going to go up to this, this sphere, and I'm just going to import him in, replacing the sphere. I'm trying to decide if I want to start breaking him up inside the actual file or inside the tool or inside a separate tool. That way I can kind of append each piece in after I break it up. I think I'm going to do that. Okay, so let's go to student only live stream, OBJs, and Sirloin UV2. Okay, let's see what scale he's in. Where is that guy? Okay, so he's teeny in here. Yeah, so bringing him back in, the scale didn't work. So I need to scale him up. I don't know why the scale didn't work. I'm trying to think why. I want to grab, let me just try appending something. I just want to see if the scale will work if I append him into this file. So I'm going to grab his chest, insert, polysphere, select it. I just need a temporary geometry because when you import an OBJ into ZBrush, just like selecting a primitive inside the gizmo, it's going to replace that geometry with whatever is in there. So I'm going to import him again, and let's just see if he's small or if he's okay. This is the size I believe he needs to be. Nope, he's smaller. Okay. But he's closer, he's not miniature. That's really strange. I don't know why. So here's the thing with OBJs. OBJ it stands for object, okay? And the only information an OBJ carries is the point value in space. If you open an OBJ file inside of a notebook or a notepad or a WordPad or something like that, you'll just see a whole bunch of numbers, and 3 numbers represent each point in space, and that's all an OBJ is. So it's really, really easy to get an OBJ to be off scale because of that reason. It's like super tricky to get it not to break. So sometimes I just have to come in here and just get it as close as possible to match him. And what I usually do is I look at, let's turn off the floor. I look at these little diamond shapes that it creates because that's where the points are. And it needs to be just barely sticking out of the surface. And so since it's not sticking out of the surface on the top, might need to push it up just a little bit. Maybe not that much. Something like that's better. And then look at the back. See, they're still kind of poking through. Still poking through. And on the chainmail, it's mostly poking through. I think that's pretty good. That's probably as good as we're going to get. Okay, so if we were to do this in Maya, I would have imported all of the high resolution parts of him into Maya and then organized them inside of Maya. And I would have had to scale well, I don't know if I would have had to scale it, but I would have had, if it was off, I would have had to scale it inside of Maya the exact same way, just to make sure. Okay, no, that's a great question, Toonimator. So with FBX, I'm going to give you a little history on FBX too. Yeah, GoZ will work. There's goods and bads with each method. You can use GoZ, you can use FBX, you can use OBJ. OBJ we've already talked about. FBX stands for Filmbox. It came from, there's a product called Motion Builder that Autodesk purchased from a company called Filmbox. And Motion Builder is basically motion capture software. Well, in order for that motion capture software to communicate with all these other softwares like Softimage and 3D Studio Max and Maya and all these different ones, they had to come up with their own file format called Filmbox, FBX file. And that file would bring with it animation, models, textures, even camera data, lighting data, everything. Okay, that's what Filmbox does. But Filmbox has so many different versions and they work with so many different products that there's a good chance that a version will break one software and not another, because they're constantly adding and changing the Filmbox format. That's why when you look in FBX import export, there's several different versions inside of there. And for example, going into 3D Coat, the latest version of Filmbox doesn't even work. You have to roll back one version. And it's kind of the same going back and forth between Maya or Marmoset, where it can just introduce problems that you may not even know are happening because it's also bringing in the textures and the animations and all that stuff. So OBJ, as crappy as the scaling is, it is the cleanest file format that you can get because it's just the model, nothing else. Well, it's texture too, but it's just the model data, and there's nothing that it's going to introduce to mess it up, right? There's no gotchas. And that's why sometimes if you are having a problem inside of ZBrush with one of your meshes, like say you're trying to merge it down and it just goes into shards, you know, you've seen when shards just happen like crazy. Sometimes if you export that model out as an OBJ and re-import it, what that's going to do is strip off whatever garbage is affecting that model. And when you bring it back in and like subdivide it or merge it down or whatever, there's a good chance that it will have fixed that problem. So that's kind of a problem solving technique that you can do. Okay. So that's FBX and OBJ. Now, the GoZ with Maya actually uses a .ma file. So it uses a native Maya file. I believe it's also hooking into FBX. I'm not sure, but the problem that I find with GoZ, and it's a lot like FBX, is Pixelogic and Autodesk, they work together to create this thing, and they thought they would be fancy and try to make some of the materials that you've assigned inside of ZBrush get hooked to your models as it goes across. And it's doing some scaling stuff in the background to try and keep things the same scale. And it also has this handshaking connection between the two that a lot of times I will actually run into problems where I will accidentally like stomp over some of my models or meshes because, or accidentally break that handshaking connection because, you know, say you're working with your models and you make a new model, maybe in a different file, like when you're saving the numbers out, the numbered variations of the files out, sometimes you'll break those connections and then you'll try to go Z and it will stomp out what you had before, or it'll bring in the old version, or it won't let you overwrite it, or it's just a whole bunch of things that I've found that GoZ creates problems. It works wonderfully with scale, going back and forth, like you said, but sometimes it'll introduce other things that aren't the best as far as like you can't see it, maybe you don't know. That's why 9 times out of 10, I will just use OBJ because it's the cleanest format possible. But like you just saw, sometimes it will mess up the scale. So anyway, that's my long explanation as far as which file format to use for what. But anyway, I just want to look at the top of the head is still just slightly too much. I want to bring it down. Maybe like this, because the face matters. I just need it to be within the envelope, so when I bake it, it's not going to mess up, you know. Oh, you have some mocap files to apply to characters in Unity, and they're FBX. Yep. FBX just stands for Filmbox, motion capture files. So I ran a motion capture studio for 2 years when I worked at Glyphix. And we used Motion Builder exclusively. And it was a lot of fun, but man, it was a lot of work. And it's difficult because when you do motion capture, you kind of step back from being an animator and you step into motion cleanup guy, right? You're like, you just get all of these. So if you think about an OBJ, it's the data is giving you triple numbers for the point coordinates. Well, motion capture works the same way. It's giving you 3 numbers for every marker on the person's body. And those markers get attached to skeletons, and the skeletons drive the characters, right? So the cameras are trying to align, or triangulate is what it's called, triangulate the coordinates of those markers. And sometimes the data just gets screwed up and goes all over the place. So you have to go through and clean up that data and get rid of those jumps and bumps. It kind of looks like a heart monitor, you know, and you're trying to like level out the heartbeat of the motion. So anyway, it's a crazy thing to get into. But yeah, you're welcome, Mark. Okay. Oh, one more thing I have to say about OBJ is the Pixologic people actually rewrote their version of OBJ to also include vertex color information. So now Marmoset and 3D Coat are actually using that vertex color information. That's why you can import your high resolution version of your model into Marmoset or 3D Coat or wherever, and it will bring in the color with it. So that was something that Pixologic did that other companies are using. So interesting little bit of history. I actually asked Ofair about that. Ofair is like Mr. Pixologic. he wrote most of ZBrush, and he's always at the ZBrush Summit. Really cool guy. Okay, so now that we have this in place, let's start to break it apart. And here's another thing you can do too, and I didn't even think about that, is I can isolate this guy by holding down Shift and clicking on this eyeball, and then I'm just going to show the chest piece. Because the chest piece, I'm not looking at the high resolution, I'm just looking at the low resolution chest piece, and I can get this even closer to matching up with it. So I'm pretty dang close. Yeah, that's good. Or any of these pieces for that matter, any of them that I can see. So there's the chainmail piece. It's pretty dang close. Looks like I'm slightly higher, but it's hard to just barely scooch it. I wish I could arrow key it up and down, right? But or even type in a number like you can in Maya, but you can't. It's just like brute force move this gizmo arrow as slowly as you possibly can in increments. So that's all you get. But I think we're pretty good. Just want to check the hands. Yeah, we're pretty dang close. Okay, I'm happy with that. Now, what I could do if I wanted to, and I want to show you, and this is kind of what Caitlin was asking about, is transfer UVs. Okay, so I'm going to save this as Sirloin33 again, because I haven't really done too much to it. Is I can transfer UVs from one object to another as long as the object is the same. Okay, so this piece has UVs on it. So if I go down to, I'm going to open the shelf again, go to UV Master, and I hit flatten, we're going to see all, here, let me solo this. Okay, we're going to see all the UVs that came over from Maya, but they're going to be flipped upside down. Another dumb thing that ZBrush does that I have no idea why they do it, but it flips it upside down. So if you remember what Maya looks like, the face is right side up, and in ZBrush it's upside down. It doesn't really affect you too much. Just know that it does it so you're not freaked out, okay? So all the UVs are there. We can hit unflatten, and the first thing I like to do is do an auto groups, okay? Now, just be careful inside of ZBrush because there are many functions inside of ZBrush that love to stomp out your UVs and just kill them. You know, it's just like ZBrush just hates UVs for some reason, and the functions will just destroy them. And so then you'll just try and like take your model out and send it over to Marmoset, and Marmoset's like, yeah, this doesn't have any UVs. I'm going to give you a black map, right? So every time you do something, you want to check that your UVs are still intact by hitting flatten over here, just to check your UVs. Okay. So for example, with these shoulders, and this is another ideal reason to use group split. Group split will not destroy UVs. Okay, as far as I know. Okay, so we're gonna hide those shoulder pieces and stick them in its own polygroup like this. One thing you cannot do is obviously you can't do a mirror and weld because it's going to change your topology of your entire character and destroy the UVs. So be very careful with that. All of the chainmail is in the same group. So we're going to isolate this and put it all in the same polygroup like this. And it's just kind of like walking yourself through and putting everything in its own polygroup that it needs to be in. Okay, now the hair is in its own, which it already should be. And the face is in its own. I love how he's got one eye. It's like creepy-eyed Joe. And the face is in its own, and the teeth are each in their own. The cornea, the eyeball. That's all good. And then all the rivets. So all the rivets need to be in their own. So the easiest thing to do is hide everything but the rivets. Okay, so hey Andreas, how you doing? Hit Control W and put everything in its own polygroup. There we go. So now we should have everything separated into its own polygroup as far as the lows. Okay, these are all the lows that we're going to be using. So once again, I'm going to save it because this is a good point, because if I destroy this somehow for some reason, I have a way to go back. Okay, so I'm going to save it. Now it's saved. And I'm going to use group split. But I don't want this to be in the same folder as everything else. This is why I wanted to put it in kind of its own tool. In fact, I'm gonna replace this one over here with this ruler. I'm just gonna grab this guy and append the other one. So see, I can tell the difference because this one has 2 subtools, this one has 49 subtools, and you can append it because see how it's showing the guy right here? The reason it's showing the guy is because over in the one with 49, I have this one selected. Okay, if you ever want to append a subtool to another tool, all you have to do is select the object. So if I select this head and I go back to here and I want to append, so if I say append, you'll see now that the head is showing up here. So if I click that head, it's going to pull it in right here. Okay. So I obviously don't want the head, so I'm going to delete it. But I'll go back to this subtool, or this tool, grab the guy, go over here, and I'm going to delete these two. Delete, delete. Then append the new guy. Boom, right here. Oh, really? Oh, you know what? Gosh. See how he's really teeny again? Oh, that messes it up. Okay, so another gotcha of ZBrush is when I set up my ruler file, just to work back and forth with the scale in Maya with OBJs, if you look down here in export, this is set to, oh, that's why. The scale should be set to, it was set to 100, but it should be set to 1. So when I push stuff over to Maya, and I set Maya to meters, and that's, you know what? Since this number was off, and it should be set to 100 by default, okay? But since it was like 2 point something, no wonder the scale was off. So just so you know, I made that ruler file so OBJs can go back and forth between Maya without any problems whatsoever, quote unquote, right? But you have to maintain this scale being set to 100, and by default, the ruler file is set to 100. So I could take that sphere that comes with that ruler, export it to Maya, and bring it back into ZBrush all day long, just like GoZ, but with OBJ. Okay, but somehow, some way, this scale got messed up. The scale also works between tools inside of ZBrush. So when I brought him into that other tool, it actually looked at that scale size and messed it up. So now I'm going to set this scale to 1, which should fix it. So now if I go back here, go here, and append it again. Where is he? Append him again. He should be, oh, he's even smaller. Gosh dang it. Yay, the woes of scaling. So let me see, 1 second. Let me go back to here. Exports, is it 10? I'm trying to remember what default is. You would think it would be 1, not 10. Try it one more time. It seems like it's getting smaller and smaller each time. He's all little. What about this guy? He's the same. Forget it. All right. I'm not going to put it into its own. Okay, I'm just going to leave it here because I'm having problems going back and forth, which is really strange. Okay. So I'm just going to put it in its own folder instead. How's that? Control F. Put it in its own folder. Call this new lows. Okay. Just so it's not in with all of these other lows. So it's just in this one. Now, since it's in this folder, I'm going to go group split. Okay, so group split. It warns me it's not an undoable option. Good working in Sculptember, yeah. Okay, I'm gonna hide this head. Okay, so now we have, or we should have, all of these new lows, and they should have UVs. So let's check them. So let's flatten this head. Solo. There we go. So his head has UVs. We're good. Okay, so let's hit unflatten, and I'm just going to check another one. Check the pants. Flatten. Okay, the pants have UVs. Great. So now we're good. So group split, like I said, group split does not destroy UVs. It will split up your object. It's all combined. But now you'll see that all of these pieces and parts the names are lost. Okay, I no longer have the names on them. I can do two things. I can either copy the UVs from one to the old one, or I can rename the new stuff. Okay, either way works. It doesn't really matter. But I'm going to show you how to do both. Okay, and when you copy and paste UVs, you can only do it to an object that is the same as the object that you're copying them to. And that object may have subdivision levels on there, but it's going to bark at you and say, you can't paste the UVs on here because it has subdivision levels. So if it does have subdivision levels, you have to freeze the subdivision levels, paste the UVs, and then unfreeze it. But what that does is that rebuilds your subdivision levels just like split hidden does, like we were talking about before. So just keep that in mind. Okay, so what we're going to do is I'm going to grab this head with UVs and say copy UVs. This works extremely well. It's almost magic the way it works, okay? Copy UVs, and then I can go up to the old head, wherever it is, right here, head low, okay? And I can look at the UVs that are on it now. See, these are old UVs. This is not what we want. Okay, unflatten, paste UVs. Flatten it again. Look at that. They're pasted on there exactly where they need to be. Okay? And this actually works even if you know, when I exported him in and I had this teeny tiny little sirloin, he was a little tiny guy, I could copy the UVs off of that tiny little sirloin, paste them onto the properly scaled sirloin, and to be just fine, and it would work. Okay? Because UVs are just UV coordinates within the UV system. So all you should be worried about is the UVs on the object itself. So essentially, you could just kind of go down the list. So I could grab the UVs. Whoops, I need to unflatten him first. Unflatten this one. And there's lots of places for human error here. So be very, very careful when you're doing this stuff. You could accidentally leave something unflattened or whatever. So I'm going to grab this chest, copy UVs, go to this chest, paste UVs. Click the chest, make sure it's they're there, flatten it. Those UVs look good. Okay, unflatten just to check. Go to the shoulder pads, copy UVs, go to these shoulder pads, paste UVs. Go to the pants, copy, go to these pants. Sorry, I'm going fast. Paste. And you can always check by hitting flatten. Those UVs look good. Those are the straightened out UVs that the pants have, okay? And I'm just going down this list to the hands, copy UVs to the hands, paste UVs. I wish there was a Control-C, Control-V like in 3D Coat. Copy the UVs from the hair, paste the UVs on the hair. The tongue. Okay, where's the tongue? There it is. Paste. Teeth. Okay, these are the lower teeth. Got to make sure the lower, paste onto the lower. And then the upper. See, isn't this crazy? Extraordinary how this works. Honestly, you can't do it like this inside of Maya, at least not to my knowledge. Paste UVs, not this easily. Okay, this is the cornea. I think I have the same cornea here. Paste. I'm going to flatten it just to check. There it is. Looks good. And we got the skirt thing. And imagine if you had like just a bajillion of these subtools. This is, I don't even know how many low subtools I have. I don't know that the rivets, yeah, they do. Copy UVs. They do have UVs. Rivets. Paste. Chainmail, we're almost done. We got two more. Chainmail. Copy. Chainmail, paste. And then go down to eyeball. Eyeball copy. And eyeball paste. Boom. All UVs are copied and pasted back onto the old lows that we had before we exported them to Maya to do the UVs. So yeah, now essentially we could delete all of these, the ones that we just brought in. And that's okay because we didn't scale them exactly correct. Yeah, right, Hero? It's like copy paste UVs. The only problem, Hero, with this is the naming convention, right? because when you bring this in and you split it up, it's going to just randomly name these things whatever. So I don't know how you would grab the objects and paste to each one. You know what I'm saying? Like, just because it gives them random names, you'd have to do it object based. But if I didn't break these up properly, like say I didn't break up the upper teeth and the lower teeth, and I tried to paste the combined teeth to a single upper tooth on, it just wouldn't work. It would give you an error, or it just wouldn't work at all. It wouldn't give you anything. So anyway, it's kind of worth the little bit of pain and suffering that I went through there. It didn't take too long. Pasted all of those, and now I can delete them. And now we have the proper UVs on all of our original objects, and we're completely ready for baking. So we can now export this entire thing out if we wanted to as an FBX and bring it into Marmoset and start doing the making the folders and going through exactly how I show you how to bake in the course. Okay, and it looks like we're out of time, and we'll do that next week. So we now have our UVs and our objects back into ZBrush, and we have our eyes built out. The only thing we don't really have is the sword. I haven't UV'd and retopologized the sword yet. I'll get to that later. I just wanted to move on with this stuff and try and get to it as fast as possible. But like I said, I really wanted everybody to see exactly how long it takes to create a character. Even though I'm talking through all of this stuff, and it is extending this like 2 hours a week for however long. It is slow, but I think it's worth showing you how long it takes to do this stuff. So I hope you guys are enjoying it and aren't too bored with it. So let me know. Let's see. So I can hide the new lows. This looks like Terminator. He's got one eyeball in there. Pretty funny. So anyway, guys, I'm going to save this out now that we have it. Sirloin 33. And now, just really fast before we go, I'm going to look at, we can close this now that we're done. I am going to look at the names just to make sure we have all the pieces and they're named properly. Okay, so I am going to remove the ILO I off of here and just call it ILO, because we just have one. Okay, same with the cornea. I forget, it doesn't need to be, it just needs to be cornea low, because it's in its own bake group. So if you can think about these, you're welcome, Zunulu. So all of these, the names of these, each piece is going to be in its own bake group. So if you think about it that way, you can see each of these pieces are named what the object is _ low. Okay, so going to Marmoset and to Substance for that matter, moving over there, these are going to be bake groups. That's what they're going to be called. Okay, Sirloinometer. No, that's good, Mark. I want you to see that it's not just like a cooking show where it's like, I made this lasagna and now I put it away and I bring out the finished thing. You know what I mean? It's like you need to see every single thing that goes into building these things, so you're not surprised, and you're not doing the whole what were we talking about earlier today during the stream? What's it called? Just so you're not thinking that you should be faster than you already are. I want to say impersonator syndrome, but it's not. What is that called? Somebody help me out. Anyway, where you're just like, I'm not doing it fast enough. I'm just not good enough. Blah, 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 blah. Again, I got to iterate. You are at your own pace. You are learning this at your own pace, and you're creating at your own pace. You will get faster as you do these things. And even me having done this for years and years and years, it still takes time to do this stuff. And that being said, it's very, very easy to get burnt out. Like it's easy to create your high resolution character and then just go, I don't want to do the low resolution. I don't want to do the UVs. I don't want to do the retopology. that sounds like it sucks. I'm going to put it away and move on to the next character. Okay. There's something to be said about that as far as burnout and things like that. It's fine to put it on the back burner and come back to the retopologize and UVs. Imposter syndrome. Thank you. I said impersonator syndrome. I wonder what that is. I can't stop impersonating people. Anyway, there's something to be said about trying to keep the passion high and trying to keep your excitement level high. And you don't have to do a full character when you're just learning this stuff. Talk about imposter syndrome. Like this awesome thing comes up and it's like, I have to go back to my sirloin. Anyway, yeah, just this stuff just takes time, and there is such a thing as burnout. And how to keep yourself motivated is, you just got to kind of power through it, and you can start small and you'll get more and more comfortable with it. And the more comfortable you get with it, the better you'll get, and the more confident you'll get when you're building your characters and doing the UVs and doing the retopology. So don't bite off more than you can chew in the beginning and just say, I'm going to take this giant detailed character all the way to the end. There's a good chance that you're just going to be kicking yourself because you bit off more than you can chew. And that will go towards burnout very, very quickly. So like I say, start small as you can as far as how you feel your level of skill is at. I know it's hard to kind of tell where your skill is at, but just don't take on too much. Yeah, so did you lay out the eyeball UV on its own tile, or was it overlapping to the face when I didn't understand? Maybe I missed. So Marcus, yes, the eyeball will be with its own material, so it's not going to be with the face material at all. You have to think about it as it being by itself. Okay, the eyeball will have its own material all by itself, and it will not interfere or intrude on the face material or UVs at all, even though it looks like it's overlapping and stuff like that right now, which it is, but it's going to have its own material, so you don't have to worry about it. Same with the cornea is going to get its own material. The body is going to get its own material, and the head is going to get its own. So we're going to split it up into 4 materials this time. So, okay. Well, thank you so much for watching, everyone. Like I said, I'm just going to go through here and look at, not here, here, and look at the names and make sure what you need to look for, just really fast, is you need to look for the name of the high first, and then what you're baking it to, and then what it's called. Okay, so it takes on the bake group first, and then what you're baking it to second. Okay, so with these rivets, all of these rivets are going to be baked to those low resolution rivets, to 1 rivet, and it's going to be in its own bake group. So that's why it's called rivets. And this skirt is its own bake group, and the chainmail is its own bake group. So we have to combine them and look and make sure that, like, say chainmail, and it has to be spelled exactly correct. So chainmail underscore low has to be the same spelling as chainmail underscore high underscore chain. Now with the high, the reason we put an extra name on the back end is because you can have several different meshes baked to 1 single mesh. Does that make sense? So essentially, if like say if this chainmail had some extra pieces to it floating around and they were extra different subtools, they would be called, like say there was a badge on there that I wanted to project down. You could call it like badge or chainmail high badge is what it would be called, if you want it to be collected in the same bake group. And I go over that in detail inside the course when we're baking Kate. Okay, so, and we talk about that quite a bit. So this is just the naming convention that we're going to go through. And I've heard that Substance Painter can also use Marmoset's baking name convention now. You didn't used to be able to do that, but I believe you can now, and I want to double check it and see. But anyway, yeah, thank you so much for watching, guys. Have a wonderful weekend. Again, no Q&A session this Friday because I'm going to be in California at the Lightbox Expo. If you're in town, please stop by. I would love to meet you in person. We got to get some selfies of some more students. And also, I want to do a miniature vlog where I'm going to take a camera around through the Lightbox Expo so you guys can all see what it's like. There's going to be so much top talent there from film studios and television and games and illustration, just all the top talent in the industry. A ton of them are going to be there. I can't wait. It's going to be a fantastic time. So I'll try and get you there with me as much as I possibly can so you can experience some of what it's like to be there. Okay, so take care, have a great weekend, and we'll see you next week. All right, cheers.